The house looked the same as it always had, neat and suburban and unremarkable. Mom answered the door with her usual bright smile, though I noticed it did quite reach her eyes. Dad was in the living room, reading glasses perched on his nose as he scrolled through his tablet. Was sitting on the couch, her hands clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles were white. Well, Mom said with forced cheerfulness, isn't this nice, all of us together? Sarah stood up abruptly. I'm in therapy. The statement landed in the room like a stone dropped in still water. Oh, Mom said, her smile flickering. That's good. I've been going for 6 months, Sarah continued, her voice shaking slightly. And I've been working through a lot of things. Things I did. Things that were done to me. Patterns I learned in this house. Dad set down his tablet. Sarah, if this is about... Let me finish. Her voice was firm now, stronger. I asked everyone here because I need to say something, and I need you all to hear it, especially you. She looked at me for the first time since I'd arrived. I felt my chest tighten. That morning when I pushed your face into the sink, she said, and I saw her eyes beginning to glisten, that wasn't an accident. That wasn't just sibling roughhousing. I was angry and I hurt you deliberately, and it was wrong. What was more wrong was that Mom and Dad laughed. They stood there and laughed while you were bleeding and scared and in pain. Sarah, Mom started, we didn't realize. You realized. Sarah cut her off. You just didn't care enough in that moment to do anything about it. And do you know what that taught me? What that taught both of us? The room was silent. It taught me that I could hurt someone I was supposed to love and there would be no consequences. That violence could be funny. That someone's pain could be entertainment. And it taught him, her voice broke, it taught him that his pain didn't matter. That he couldn't trust the people who were supposed to protect him. Tears were streaming down her face now. I've spent 6 months in therapy understanding how fucked up that was. How fucked up I was, how fucked up we all were. And I need you to know that I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. She was looking directly at me now, and I could see 7 years of guilt and growth and genuine remorse in her eyes. Something inside my chest that had been locked tight for years began to crack open. I was horrible to you, she continued, and I learned that from somewhere. I learned that in this house from the way we were taught to treat vulnerability and pain and weakness, like it was something to mock, something to laugh at. Mom was crying now too, though whether from shame or sadness I couldn't tell. Dad sat very still, his face unreadable. I can't take it back, Sarah said. I can't undo the damage, but I can acknowledge it. I can tell you that you deserved better, that you deserved parents who would have stopped me, who would have held you while you cried, who would have made sure you knew that what happened was wrong and not your fault. I can tell you that your pain mattered, that you mattered. The words hung in the air, and I realized I was crying too. Not quiet tears, but deep gasping sobs that I hadn't allowed myself in years. All the pain I'd swallowed, all the hurt I'd minimized, all the times I'd laughed along with jokes about that morning came pouring out. Sarah crossed the room and wrapped her arms around me. I'm sorry, she whispered again. I'm so sorry. And for the first time since that morning 7 years ago, I felt like maybe, just maybe, someone actually saw me. The conversation that followed was difficult, uncomfortable. My parents tried to defend themselves at first, to minimize, to explain away their laughter as misunderstanding the situation. But Sarah pushed back, gently but firmly. She'd done the work to understand the dynamics at play, and she wasn't going to let them rewrite history. Eventually, slowly, my mother began to really cry. Not the polite tears from earlier, but deep, wrenching sobs. I failed you, she said, looking at me. Both of you. I taught you such terrible things about love and care and how to treat each other. My father was slower to break, but when he did, it was quieter. I thought I was being a good dad by not coddling you, he said, by teaching you to be. But I can see now that there's a difference between resilience and neglect. I'm sorry, son. Were these perfect apologies? No. Did they fix everything? No. Healing isn't a single conversation or a tearful reconciliation. It's years of work of rebuilding trust, of learning new patterns. But it was a beginning. Today, 5 years later, Sarah and I have coffee every Sunday morning. We talk about our lives, our jobs, our relationships. We talk about the work we're both doing in therapy, the patterns we're trying to break, the ways we're trying to be better than what we were taught. My relationship with my parents is more complicated. They're trying in their own way to be more present, more aware. We're all learning slowly how to take each other's pain seriously, how to sit with discomfort instead of laughing it away. My nose still sits a little crooked on my face. Sometimes when I look in the mirror, I see that 15-year-old boy, bleeding and confused, wondering why his pain was funny. But more often now, I see someone who survived. Someone who learned that healing is possible, that people can change, that it's never too late to start telling the truth about what hurt us. The bathroom in my apartment now doesn't look anything like the one from my childhood. But sometimes when I'm brushing my teeth, I'll catch my reflection and remember, not with the sharp pain of trauma, but with something softer. Something like compassion for that kid who learned all the wrong lessons about love. Sarah sent me a text this morning, proud of you. For everything you've survived, for everything you're becoming. Sometimes we need reminders that our pain mattered, that we mattered, that we mattered, that we were always worthy of protection and care and love, even when the people who should have shown us that forgot, especially then. The weight of laughter can be crushing, but the weight of genuine love, of real apology, of actual change, that's the kind of weight that helps you stand taller. I'm still learning to carry, but I'm learning. And that, I think, is enough. The weight of laughter, the bathroom mirror showed everything in brutal clarity that morning. My reflection stared back at me, toothbrush in hand, mint foam gathering at the corners of my mouth. I was 15 years old, and I had no idea that the next 30 seconds would reshape the architecture of my entire childhood. I heard her footsteps before I saw her. Sarah's presence had always announced itself like a storm rolling in from the horizon. At 17, she carried herself with the casual cruelty that teenagers sometimes mistake for confidence, but there was something different in her approach that morning, something I couldn't quite name in the split second before it happened. The force came from behind, sudden and absolute. Her hands connected with the back of my head, and my face crashed into the porcelain sink with a sickening crack that seemed to echo through the entire house. Pain exploded across my nose and cheekbones, blood mixed with toothpaste, spiraling down the drain in pink ribbons. The toothbrush clattered against the faucet before falling to the floor. I heard it then, the laughter. Not Sarah's triumphant cackle, which I might have expected. That would have been awful enough. No, this was worse. This was the sound of my parents standing in the doorway, watching the whole thing unfold like it was some kind of slapstick comedy routine. My mother's laugh was high and melodious, the same sound she made when watching her favorite sitcoms. My father's was deeper, more of a chuckle, really the kind of sound that said kids will be kids. Through the tears blurring my vision and the blood streaming from my nose, I turned to look at them. They were actually holding on to each other, my mother leaning against my father's shoulder, wiping tears from her eyes. "Oh, honey," my mother managed between giggles. "You should have seen your face." The irony of that statement, given that my face was currently swelling and bleeding, seemed lost on her entirely. Sarah stood behind me, and when I caught her reflection in the mirror, I saw something that chilled me more than the laughter. Her smile had already faded. Her eyes were wide, not with satisfaction but with something else, something like fear or maybe recognition. "I didn't mean," she started, but my father waved her off. "Don't worry about it," he said, still chuckling. "Your brother's fine. Aren't you, champ? I wasn't fine." My nose was definitely broken, bent at an angle that looked wrong even through my watering eyes, but I nodded anyway. Because what else do you do when the people who are supposed to protect you find your pain entertaining? The thing about trauma is that it doesn't just live in the moment it happens. It spreads like cracks in ice, spider webbing through everything that comes after. I didn't realize it at the time, but that morning rewired something fundamental in how I understood my place in my family. In the world, really. I stopped expecting protection. I stopped expecting to be taken seriously when I was hurt. Most dangerously, I started to believe that my pain was, at best, inconvenient and at worst, amusing. The nose healed crooked. My parents took me to the emergency room that afternoon, after the laughter had subsided and reality set in. The doctor asked how it happened. I remember the weight of my parents' stares, the pressure of their presence, even though they were sitting behind me. I slipped. I said, hit the sink. The doctor looked at me for a long moment, then at my parents, then back at me. He nodded slowly, set the brake as best he could, and sent us home with pain medication and care instructions. Sarah avoided me for weeks after that. When we did cross paths in the hallway or at dinner, she wouldn't meet my eyes. I told myself it was guilt, but I was too angry to care, too hurt, too confused about why my parents had laughed, why they hadn't immediately rushed to help me, why they seemed more concerned about me making a big deal out of it than about the fact that their daughter had violently assaulted their son. High school became a blur of keeping my head down and my pain private. I learned to laugh at myself before others could laugh at me. I learned to minimize everything, to make myself small, to never take up too much space or require too much care. These seemed like survival skills at the time. I didn't realize I was slowly erasing myself. I left for college 3 years after the incident. Sarah had already moved out by then, working as a paralegal in a firm downtown. We barely spoke. Our parents had settled into treating the whole thing as water under the bridge, occasionally even referencing it as that funny morning when you face planted into the sink. I never corrected them. What would be the point? College was supposed to be a fresh start, but you can't outrun the stories you tell yourself about who you are. I drifted through classes and relationships, never quite connecting, never quite letting anyone see too much. My roommate freshman year asked me once why I apologized so much, even for things that weren't my fault. I don't know, I'd said, laughing it off. Bad habit, I guess. But I did know. I was apologizing for existing, for taking up space, for having needs or feelings that might inconvenience anyone. I was apologizing for the burden of being someone who could be hurt. The phone call came during my senior year, late on a Tuesday night. It was Sarah. We hadn't spoken in months, maybe longer. Her voice sounded strange, tight and high. "Can you come home this weekend?" she asked. "Ooh, I need to talk to you. To all of us really, but mostly you. What's going on? Please just, can you come?" Something in her voice made me say yes.